Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is VIN 3090, and before I proceed any further, this is a rebuilt title car. This is a 2020 223, which is Caviar with LA30 red interior, for sale on Facebook Marketplace with only 7,000 miles, and it is actual miles, $49,500 in North Carolina. And I do know the owner of this car, and I know the car that he used to rebuild the front of it as well, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Production statistics: 448 out of the 2,348 cars for the US 49 were Caviar, quite a few. 202 had LA30 red interior. That's the fourth most common color combo: white with red, white with black, black with black, and then this car black with red. 8.6% of all of the US 49 production was this color combo, so like a 2 or 3 out of 10. However, for 2020, the second lowest production year, 2018 being the lowest, 2020, 46 out of the 187 cars for the US 49 were Caviar. Of those, only 19 had LA30 red interior. So this car at its rarest is one of 19. This car was built November 5th of 2019. It was in service date was June 10th of 2020. It should have engine number 2084953. And it has options 2Q, which is the all-weather floor mats, FT, which is the split polished wheels instead of the black wheels, has GF, which is the heads-up display. Not all the 17s through 20s had the heads-up display. Most of them did, but this one, you had to option it. Has Mark Levinson, and it has option SE, which is the blue calipers, along with Z2, which is the comfort and convenience package that has a trunk mat, cargo net, wheel locks, key glove, things like that. And it has a rear applique on the rear bumper, the clear piece of film on the top of the back bumper. Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. So Carfax shows this as a 3-owner, 1 accident in March of 2023, which is what totaled it to the front, and a rebuilt title has been issued in North Carolina. It did have the airbags deployed, and we'll get into some of that in the photos. Epic VIN shows this as a 3-owner, 6 accident car, which is not correct. It's all the same one single accident, but every time it got moved to the auction or from it or somewhere else, it reported that as an accident, which is silly. But it looks like it's just the 1 accident. And AutoCheck, sort of a similar situation, 3-owner, 3 accident, but again, they're just moving it around and it just counts it as an accident. But it says severe damage, airbags deployed. Previous sales. So this car first went on sale December of 2019 for almost $90,000 in New Jersey, and it was still for sale in April of 2020, still for sale in June of 2020, and it finally sold at the end of June 2020, so about 7 months for sale. And then it pops up at CarMax in December of 2021 in Georgia for $80,000 with 2,000 miles, and then it looks like a month later they raised the price to $83,000, and it sold in May of 2022 to a buyer in Ohio. Then it pops up at Copart, Insurance Salvage Auto Auction, right after the accident, 2023, and you can see that it smacked the driver's front pretty good, and the airbags were deployed, and so there's going to be some expense in rebuilding it there. And the car had 4,900 miles at the time, so that was about 2,000 miles ago, but about 3 years ago. So here it is in July of 2026 with 7,000 miles for $49,500. So now into the photos. So again, as I said, I know this owner pretty well. We talk pretty regularly. So he used VIN 2198, which he also owned at the time, which was hit in the rear. So he parted that car out. A lot of people bought parts off of it, but he used the parts from the front end to rebuild this car. And so that car, unfortunately, is no longer with us. It was fully parted out and cut up and disposed of. But as I said, it's a pretty hard hit in the front, and the airbags were deployed, but knowing this owner, I would not think he would cut any corners rebuilding this car. He has rebuilt other cars as well, RCFs on top of that. And so he's an enthusiast as well, so he knows his stuff, and he took his time to rebuild this car. You can see that, he got it in 2023, so he's like 3 years to rebuild this car, and at least 2, and he took his time, and then now he enjoyed it for a while. Now he's going to sell it and move on to the next one. He's sent me pictures along the way, so here's some of those. You can see what it looked like after he got it from the auction and cleaned up. It looks like a fantastic example. It looks like a car with 7,000 miles should. I have no issues there. I would just make sure that you pull the radiator cover on top and look at the repairs, pull the fender liners, you know, kind of just satisfy yourself that the repairs were high quality and were repaired correctly. So as far as the price goes, for 2020 rebuild title cars, this is pretty uncharted territory because most of the 2020s that are salvage title, they were hit hard enough where like entire suspension pieces are missing. There's one on IAAI right now that's sitting there with the entire front missing and the A-pillar buckled. It's gonna be a parts car, but they want like 20 grand for it. That's usually how the 2020s end up because they are much higher value. And if they're totaled, it usually takes some pretty severe damage to total them. And so this car being rebuilt, I believe there's only one other 2020 that has a rebuilt title. The rest of them are all stolen, flood, salvage, otherwise, that are not gonna be back on the road. So here's how I would calculate this one. A clean title 2020 with 7,000 miles in this market is nearly $80,000. Upper 70s at a minimum. So for a rebuild title car, subtract about a third, so 25 to 33%, and that puts it at about $51,000, $52,000. He's asking $49,500. It sounds high, but that's because you're used to looking at so many 16s and 17s that are for sale. So I think it's fair for this market compared to what a clean title one of these would fetch with this mileage. So it's never going to be collectible because it's a rebuild title, but it can be a very enjoyable daily driver. It's already got low miles on it, so you can go put 200,000-300,000 miles on it without any worry and not care about the value. It's already been depreciated. You're getting it at basically 20 to 30% off, and you know, I don't see any issues there for where the price is. I think it's pretty fair, and you know, it seems high because it's a 2020. So now into the service history. When this car was totaled, it didn't even have enough miles for its first oil change. It was getting close to it. So I don't expect to see a lot on the service history, and that's the case. It's just pre-delivery inspection, and it didn't even have its first oil change. So likely this owner did the first oil change because it was hit on the front, probably has coolant already changed, probably transmission fluid changed, even though it was hit on the opposite side of where the transmission cooler is. Just check to make sure that the fluids were done, but I'm pretty sure they were. But yeah, on the service history, it's just pre-delivery inspection. That's it. So you would have to ask the owner what all he's done, but I would just suspect an oil change, coolant at a minimum, maybe transmission fluid. The only other thing that I would look for is date codes on the tires. They're getting up there 6, 7 years old. If they are original, if they came from the parts car, you know, maybe a different date on them, but that would be something that I would look at. Just ask for what the date codes are, or if the tires have been recently replaced. Don't have any issues with the brakes because it's only got 7,000 miles, so you got at least another 10 to 15,000 miles before you have to start worrying about brakes. So that brings me to would I buy this car? Absolutely. Knowing the person, I would not hesitate to buy a rebuilt title car from this guy. It's no corners were probably cut, and it appears to be done very well. Everything lines up. So again, I don't have any issues there. And if I was going to buy a rebuilt title car, this is definitely the one I would try to get. And so being a 2020, it still has the 4G cellular connection, so you can still remote start it. You still have the full cruise control all the way down to stop. It has the lane keep instead of the lane departure. So for the cruise control, it has some of the later technology that was offered on these cars. It has the black mirrors, the black trim that the 2020s had. So, you know, it's some of the more desirable stuff. And so as far as a rebuilt title car goes, yeah, I would definitely consider this one. So that's what I've got for you guys. 3090. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.